The Universal Law of Business Development by Caitlin Ann Thied. Chapter 1, Note to Self. If you're reading this and think it bizarre of my proclamation of being a business savant, I am right there with you. I wouldn't consider myself a businesswoman. After all, I hate dressing up, I adore spontaneity, but boy, oh boy, do I love curating a sense of order, mostly in my head. It's this obsession with methods that transformed the way I approached business in 2021. And in this book, I'm going to share the methods with you so that you can transform the way you do business too. Before we get there, I think it's important to revisit the time I knew beyond the shadow of a doubt I would work with businesses. It was 2013, and I was in the stuffy yet welcoming office of a dark-haired guidance officer at Tunxis Community College in Farmington, Connecticut, to talk about my choice of associate's degree. E-commerce administration? How are you going to use that? She asked, a bit puzzled since online businesses were unheard of at this time. I remember being as equally puzzled at my choice, but I responded, I don't know, I just know I need to. That year, I graduated the first and only person of the class of 2013 with an Associate of Arts in E-commerce Administration. Since I could remember, I have always been ahead of the curve. My mom reminded me of that recently, too. I was sharing the difficulty of being in a market so oversaturated with mission-driven coaches. You've got to share how you were on this trail before it was popular, she says. My mother has been super supportive of my lunatic endeavors, and for that, I am very grateful. But back to the story. Upon graduation, I spent my time continuing life as it was when I went to college, working by day and writing for businesses by night. At the time, I was climbing the corporate ladder. I was just itching for the title of manager or director, or so I thought. My rung chasing would lead me to various marketing jobs in Connecticut, specifically a blog writer and as a placed contractor for 500 Fortune companies like National Grid and Par Excel in Massachusetts, in addition to finally sinking my teeth into e-commerce with Amazon sellers and other retail businesses. I specifically recall being turned down for one position in Connecticut. I don't remember what it was for, but I do remember that I really, really wanted it. I remember this rejection so well because I had the wherewithal to ask the hiring manager, why wasn't I the top candidate? To which he replied without hesitation, you could use some more professional seasoning. I remember being so upset and vehemently disagreeing, which further proved his point. Well, it turns out as much as I loved the excuse to wear designer clothes, stilettos, and get a decent paycheck every month throughout my 20s, I just didn't seem to be cut out for the corporate world. It was all vanity to me, a status ploy, if you will. And so I felt stuck in a world I didn't belong, crying in my car before work every morning, hungry to be a full-time writer, but not having the time to do it. And that was until I received one of the greatest blessings in disguise, a medical intervention. By the way, if you're wondering why I'm sharing this, it's because I want to inspire you if you're in this position, if you've experienced hardships and setbacks. I just want you to know what I've been through because maybe you have a business too. And I just want you to know that you can get through it. And you can even use your setbacks and worst case scenarios to fling you forward. Back to the story. After being diagnosed with multiple cases of fibroids, which left my uterus distended to the point of near kidney damage, I had my uterus removed at 29 and needed leave from work. I was cleared to work only part-time. So I used the part-time position to pay my bills and worked my butt off, pitching to editors for a final exit out of the corporate grind. I remember at this time in my life, my mom gave me more advice, and I still keep it with me. Caitlin, she said hopefully, I would love to see what would happen if you stuck to just one thing. When I founded StorySpeak Enterprises in 2014, it was constantly evolving into a better idea than what it currently was, a copywriting agency. And it paid off. By 2018, I had simplified the business model and adjusted the target audience to people who could afford my services. With the help of mentors, I would land contracts starting at $3,500 a pop. And this continued for a couple years, but the success would be short-lived after running into blessing in disguise number 2, domestic violence. Unfortunately, this was my second relationship that could be labeled as domestically violent, but it would be the time I finally learned how I contributed to the dynamic. I found solace in a women's shelter, keeping my dignity, losing all money, and having to start from scratch. At the time, I was in New Jersey, but I decided to leave for California after speaking to a friend who had been living there for a while and felt home there. Just like in 2013, I didn't know why I had to go there, but I knew I needed to. Interesting side note, At this time, I was also offered the role of a copywriter for a lucrative brand and influencer in California. I would have been given housing, good pay, professional guidance, credibility, but the cost was 1 year of devoting my services to the company. I felt that too great a cost for what I had wanted, which was to build my own brand on my terms, so I declined. Thankfully, I was able to secure a contract with a client before leaving, so although I didn't know anyone, I felt I'd mitigated enough risk to go for it. So I did. And wouldn't you know it, 1 hour before I got to my destination, I was told that I no longer had living arrangements. But I didn't let that stop me. I soon found Airbnbs I could rent weekly and monthly, and then I found my people. There were other entrepreneurs, brilliantly talented writers, foreign travelers, and I encourage you to find those I remember by name online here in this book. See what they're up to and be inspired for yourself. I'll mention them at the end of this chapter. Throughout my time there, I continued fulfilling contracts and began building out an agency of writers. That wasn't until one day I was brought face to face with the opportunity to dismiss my values again, to work for a brand who was not mission inspired. I did for a while, but realized the misalignment was sapping my energy, and I found it difficult to fulfill my obligations under the contract. In every contract I make, there is a clause to allow either party to exit with written notice, so don't worry. I also linked the client with writers who were a better fit, just in case you were wondering. It was this unexpected detour which realized the need for business owners and nonprofit founders to have a single origin of business, no matter the industry, niche, or model, so that business owners, teammates, and managers could be the ones guiding writers, designers, coaches, and anyone else who was hired to help. Since that moment, when I sat desperate and determined in a California hostel, I began creating Legacy Brand Leader Blueprint, a 5-phase journey of business so anyone can conceive a business or nonprofit and exit it for profit or mission succession in the same lifetime, especially if you could use some more professional seasoning. I give to you the universal law of business development.